I stood quietly in the corner of the small living room, my soda slowly going warm in my hand as the crowd danced to the upbeat music around me. At 29, my life wasn't exactly exciting. The most notable change lately was that the accounting firm I worked for had upgraded from desktops to new laptops. My name is Sophie. I'm an ordinary accountant, living a routine life that seemed to play on repeat. But that evening at Emily's birthday party, I had no idea everything was about to change. The dim lights and echoing bass made me shrink back even more, trying to blend into the wall. I never liked loud or crowded places, but Emily was a close colleague, and she'd insisted I come. Just as I was thinking about leaving early, he appeared. David stood taller than anyone else in the room. His dark hair was neatly styled, and his smile seemed to brighten the entire space. He walked up to me with calm confidence, but without the arrogance that often came with it. "Hi, you're Sophie, right?" he asked, his voice cutting clearly through the pounding music. Yes, and you are." I tried to hide my nervousness, gripping my drink tighter. "David," he replied, his smile never fading. "I saw you standing here alone. Mind if I join you?" He didn't wait for an answer, already standing beside me like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Not at all," I replied, my voice nearly lost under the thumping rhythm. "So, what brings you here?" He leaned in slightly, just enough for me to hear him without making me uncomfortable. "It's Emily's birthday. We work together," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "You're an accountant, right?" Emily mentioned it. "That's right. Just numbers and spreadsheets," I joked, though I never found my job all that exciting. "Sounds thrilling," he raised an eyebrow, and I couldn't tell if he was teasing or genuinely curious. "Oh, definitely. The accounting world is full of wild parties and high-stakes decisions," I laughed, this time without forcing it. David laughed too, and the tension inside me began to ease. For the first time in a long time, talking to someone felt effortless. "Want to step outside for some fresh air?" he asked, tilting his head toward the back door leading to a small garden. I nodded, thankful for the chance to escape the noise. Outside, the cool air was a relief. String lights gently lit the garden, casting a soft glow over the quiet space. "What about you? What brought you here?" I asked, trying to keep my nerves in check. "Same as you. Just hoping to have a good time, maybe meet someone interesting," he said, his eyes warm and kind. We started talking about movies, books. I learned he was a graphic designer, currently working a job that didn't inspire him. Time slipped away until he pulled out his phone, the screen lighting up in the dark. "Can I get your number? I'd really like to see you again, Sophie." I hesitated for a moment. I wasn't used to someone being this straightforward, but something about him made me feel safe. "Sure," I said, quickly typing my number into his phone. When I handed it back, he smiled, a smile so sincere it made me want to believe that good things still happen. "I'll call you. We should go out. Just the two of us. What do you think?" "I think that sounds nice," I said, smiling as my heart beat a little faster, a feeling both unfamiliar and sweet. After he left, I stood in the garden, wondering if it had all really happened. My life, it seemed, had just turned a new page. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time I felt ready for it. In the days after Emily's party, I lived in a blur of anticipation and excitement. My phone was always on loud, and every notification made my heart skip a beat. Then, one Thursday afternoon, while I was halfway through a spreadsheet, my phone buzzed. It was David. "Hey Sophie, are you free tonight? I know a really cozy coffee shop, would love to grab a drink with you." I smiled as I read the message. "Sure. What time should I be ready?" I replied, my fingers moving across the screen with unexpected ease. Our first date was at a small coffee shop tucked away on a tree-lined street. Inside, warm yellow lights and the smell of fresh coffee filled the space. Gentle acoustic music played softly in the background. David chose a table by the window, where the sunset bathed his face in golden light. We talked for hours, from daily work routines to dreams we rarely spoke of. He told me about his passion for painting, and how he'd never found the courage to show his art to others. I listened, moved by his honesty. In the days that followed, life felt different, brighter. David often dropped by after work just to walk with me in the park. On Saturdays he would take me to hidden corners of the city, an old bookstore, a bakery with the scent of fresh pastries, or a street lined with spring flowers. Even the simplest things suddenly felt special. One day he invited me over for dinner. "My parents really want to meet you," he said, his eyes filled with hope. I felt a bit nervous, but I said yes. His family lived in a quiet suburb. Their house was small but full of warmth. Camille, his mother, opened the door and gave me a warm hug. "Sophie, we've heard so much about you. So glad to finally meet," she said, her kind eyes putting me at ease instantly. His father, Brian, sat in the living room and greeted me with a gentle smile. Dinner was simple, roasted chicken with vegetables, but the atmosphere was incredibly welcoming. They asked about my work, my family, and shared funny stories about David's childhood. I felt like I had been part of David's family for a long time. Time passed. Winter melted into spring, and David and I became inseparable. Our dates grew longer, our conversations deeper, and I opened my heart more than ever before. One late afternoon, David called me outside. He said he wanted to take me somewhere special. His car rolled slowly along the quiet streets until we reached the riverbank, where the city lights shimmered on the water like countless stars. A soft breeze carried the fresh scent of the river. We walked hand in hand down a stone path, until David stopped under a small bridge, where warm lights cast golden reflections around us. He turned to me, holding my hand tightly, his eyes filled with tenderness and quiet resolve. "Sophie," he said, his voice calm and sincere, "I know this might feel sudden, but I don't want to wait any longer. Will you marry me?" The question echoed in the evening air, and my heart skipped a beat. The world seemed to pause. Only the soft rush of the river and the wind filled the silence. "I do," I whispered, my voice trembling with emotion. David smiled, a smile that seemed to melt away all my doubts. He gently slipped a simple but beautiful silver ring onto my finger. It wasn't extravagant, but it was perfect, just like David, thoughtful, sincere, and full of meaning. We got married that summer in the small garden behind David's parents' house. The ceremony was modest, just close friends and family. I wore a soft white dress, simple but elegant. When I looked in the mirror, I truly felt beautiful. Camille, David's mother, helped adjust my hair, her eyes shining with pride. David stood beneath a floral arch of white roses and green leaves. As I walked toward him, he looked at me like I was the most amazing person he'd ever seen. The ceremony was heartfelt. When we exchanged vows, I felt certain I had found where I belonged. After the wedding, we moved into my small apartment. Life felt fresh, sweet, and full of possibility. But a few months later, David brought up something that made me pause. "Hey," he said, one evening as we curled up on the couch, "my parents are getting older, and I think it would really help them and us if we moved in for a while. We could save up for a house of our own in the meantime." I stayed quiet for a moment. Living with in-laws had always made me a little uneasy, but I understood David's reasoning. His family had always been kind to me, and if this could support them and help us long-term, I was willing to try. "Okay," I said, "but we need to make sure we have our own space and clear boundaries." David smiled and kissed my forehead. "I know, thank you for saying yes. I promise I'll do everything to make sure you feel comfortable." And so we started preparing for a new chapter of life together. I didn't know what was ahead, but I believed that as long as David was with me, we could face anything. Still, a quiet sense of unease settled in my heart, as if something unseen was waiting to shift everything in an instant. About 3 weeks after moving in with David's parents, I started to notice real changes. Camille had always been warm and welcoming, but now it felt like she was everywhere. She knocked on our bedroom door every morning, just to check if I needed laundry. When I cooked dinner, she would quietly hover beside me, offering tips as if I didn't know my way around the kitchen. I kept reminding myself this was her way of caring, but little by little her presence began to feel overwhelming. One afternoon I came home from work, and found her cleaning in our bedroom. All my clothes had been rearranged, and a small box of my personal keepsakes was open on the bed. "Oh, Sophie, I just wanted to tidy things up," she said, eyes wide with innocent concern. "Thank you, but you don't have to do that. I prefer organizing my things myself," I said gently, though inside I felt deeply unsettled. When I told David, he laughed it off. "She just loves cleaning. She probably doesn't realize it bothers you. Just talk to her. She'll understand." But as days passed, I felt my personal space shrinking. Everything I did felt noticed, even judged. If I got home late, Camille would ask where I'd been, who I saw, and when I planned to return. If I bought something new, she'd make passing comments about money and priority. She even suggested I give my entire monthly salary to David so he could manage the family budget more efficiently. Things escalated when David brought up renovating the house. One evening, as we all sat at the dinner table, he spoke up. "This house is getting old. The roof leaks and the wiring is outdated. I think we should renovate, not just for safety but to increase its value." His father, Brian, nodded. "That's true, but things are tight right now. A little help would really go a long way. I was caught off guard when all eyes turned to me, as if I were the obvious answer. David looked at me and added, "Sophie, could you help out, just temporarily? We'll pay you back once things get better." I hesitated. I still agreed to help. I withdrew money from my personal savings and covered part of the repair costs, but the expenses kept coming from fixing the roof to replacing the plumbing. Camille never hesitated to call contractors without even consulting me, only informing me afterward when the invoices arrived and expecting me to pay. One afternoon, while sorting through documents in the shared office drawer, I stumbled upon something that made my heart stop. A bank statement, bold letters read, "Property mortgage." My hands trembled. The house had been mortgaged, and the outstanding debt, $250,000. Even worse, the bank had issued a warning that the repayment deadline was approaching fast. My heart raced. Why hadn't anyone told me? Why had they let me pay for repairs when they knew the financial state of the house? I confronted David that evening. He sighed, unable to meet my eyes. "I didn't want you to worry," he said. "My parents are struggling. I thought, if we all pitched in it would eventually be okay. But this debt is too big, David," I said, my voice shaking. "We can't fix this alone." He went quiet for a moment. Then, without looking at me, he said something that stunned me. Maybe you could ask your dad. He's in a good financial place. It's just temporary. I promise we'll pay him back." I froze. Ask my father, the one person who had already done so much for me. It wasn't just about the money anymore, it was about the truth. How I had been deceived. How they had used my kindness and trust to hide their own failure. Still desperate to salvage the situation, I called my dad. He agreed to help, but only if everything was formally documented. That seemed fair. I didn't object. When the money was transferred, Camille and Brian were immediately relieved, thanking me over and over. But David grew distant. It was as if he resented the fact that my father had insisted on proper paperwork. And then, everything fell apart. One early morning, as I was getting ready for work, my phone rang. It was a doctor from the hospital. Their voice was soft, regretful. "Sophie, your father had an incident. We're very sorry." The floor vanished beneath me. I rushed to the hospital, but it was too late. My father had died suddenly of a heart attack. Grief swept over me like a storm. He had been my protector, my compass. Now he was gone. Just like at the funeral, David and his family appeared caring, even comforting, but between the quiet condolences, I began to hear whispers, strange things. One distant relative mentioned seeing David at the bank, inquiring about a loan he needed to erase some traces. My stomach sank. I started digging. I opened my father's files, looking for the documents about the loan, and what I found chilled me to the bone. The receipts I thought had been properly signed, they were nothing more than rough photocopies, informal, and completely lacking legal value. Piece by piece, the truth came together. Camille, Brian, and David had never intended to repay the money. They had used my trust to erase their debt, and they had made sure that if the bank foreclosed on the house, the responsibility would fall on me. I felt a wave of fury, but I forced myself to stay calm. They thought I was just a naive girl, easy to manipulate, someone they could control, but they were wrong, very, very wrong. That night, I sat alone in the small office, the warm light of the desk lamp, casting shadows across the stacks of documents, receipts, contracts, and my father's carefully written notes, lay spread before me. I stared at them in silence, the betrayal settling deep in my chest. I couldn't believe I had once called these people family, that I had loved them, trusted them, fought for them. I closed my eyes and breathed deeply, centering myself, because I knew what I had to do. I knew I couldn't let my emotions take over. If I wanted justice, I had to approach this with a clear mind and a well-planned strategy. So I decided to contact my father's longtime attorney, Mr. Howard Grayson. He had worked with our family for years, and had always been someone we could trust. "Sophie," he said over the phone, his voice gentle and full of genuine sorrow, "I heard about your father. I'm so sorry for your loss." "Thank you, Uncle Howard," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "But today, I need your help with something else, something very important." I explained everything, the money, the debt, and my growing suspicion that I'd been deceived. "I need you to review all the documents related to the loan my father gave to David's family. Something just doesn't feel right." The next day, I met Howard at his office. He had already prepared a thick file of paperwork. "Sophie, you were right to be concerned," he said seriously. "The copies you had were only placeholders, but fortunately, your father sent me the notarized originals." I looked at the official documents he handed me. Relief washed over me. Every detail was there. The loan amounts, the repayment terms, and signatures on every page. It was undeniable, and fully enforceable. I want to resolve this, but it needs to be legal and transparent, I told him firmly. Howard nodded. I'll arrange a formal meeting. Be ready. A few days later, the meeting was held at his office. David, Camille and Brian arrived, faces calm and confident. Maybe they still thought I was the same naive girl who wouldn't stand up for herself. They were wrong. Sophie, what's going on? David asked, irritation flickering in his voice. Why bring everyone here? I think it's time we clarify the issue of the money my father lent to your family, I said calmly, but firmly. Camille gave a soft laugh, trying to stay composed. Oh, sweetheart, we're family. There's no need to turn this into something formal. Yes, I said, locking eyes with her. Family. Then why was the mortgage debt kept secret from me? Why was my father's loan spent without any intention of repayment? David suddenly stood up. What are you talking about? We don't owe you anything. This is all being blown out of proportion. I didn't flinch. I calmly placed the folder on the table, opening it so everyone could see. These, I said, are the original notarized documents. Every loan, every receipt, every transaction is here, legally binding. I looked at each of them in turn. If you refuse to resolve this peacefully, I'll be forced to take legal action. Camille's face went pale, her calm cracked, her posture stiffened. Brian sat silently, hands trembling ever so slightly. Only David tried to maintain a tough exterior. Are you threatening us, Sophie? He said, trying to sound in control. You don't have any real evidence. I smiled, not with joy but with strength. On the contrary, I have all the evidence I need to take this to court, and if I do, not only will the full $250,000 be legally demanded immediately, the house could be seized by the bank as part of the repayment. Is that what you want? The room fell silent. The air grew heavy, as though everyone was holding their breath. Howard remained quietly by my side, but his steady presence gave me strength. Finally, Camille broke. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Sophie, please, she begged. We have nothing left. If we lose this house, we don't know where we'll go. I looked at her, not with hatred, but with clarity. That was your choice, I said. I replied, my voice unwavering. I won't let myself be taken advantage of anymore. After a long, intense argument, they were forced to agree. The house would be transferred to me in full to clear the debt. Every signature placed on those documents, every legal seal stamped, felt like the final nails, sealing shut the door to a painful chapter of my life. On the day they moved out, I stood on the porch and watched as David and his parents loaded their belongings into their old truck. Camille couldn't stop crying. Brian said nothing, his head lowered in quiet defeat. Then David walked up to me. The eyes that once made my heart skip now looked empty, hollow. Sophie, I know I was wrong, he said, but, could you give me another chance? For a moment, I felt a flicker of pity, but it vanished as quickly as it came. David, I said, meeting his gaze, I gave you more chances than you deserved. You lost them all. We're done. I truly hope you find your path, but not here, and not with me. He stood there, shoulders heavy with regret, then turned and walked away. As the truck drove off, a fresh breeze swept through the house. It was the first breath of peace I'd felt in a long time. In the days that followed, I began rebuilding, not just the house, but myself. I redecorated every room, every wall, every corner began to reflect me, my taste, my values, my freedom. No more lies, no more manipulation, just a home that finally felt like mine. Each morning, I looked out at the garden, flowers blooming beneath golden sunlight, and I felt alive. My life had become a blank page, clean and full of promise, and I knew one thing for certain. Never again would I allow anyone else to make decisions for me. I had reclaimed my life, my freedom, my right to choose my future, and that was my greatest victory. Sophie's story is a powerful reminder that even in the face of betrayal, grief, and manipulation, strength, dignity, and justice can prevail. She was once vulnerable and silenced, but she rose, she fought back, and she won. Her journey proves that everyone, no matter how broken they may feel, deserves happiness and freedom in their own home. What did you think of Sophie's story and her courageous transformation? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to follow the channel for more meaningful, heartfelt stories about real-life family struggles, and the strength it takes to rise above them.